I have lost over 200 pounds after going gastric bypass surgery. I have struggled with weight pretty much my whole life. I was overweight and considered obese up until I turned 23 years old when I became pregnant unexpectedly. I had wanted to have kids but had planned on addressing my health first. But going through pregnancy while I was considered morbidly obese came with a lot of challenges. I was an at-risk pregnancy and was in the doctor's office a lot. And then during delivery, me and my son were almost lost, and that experience pushed me to undergo my bypass surgery. I always was a bigger kid. I started struggling with my weight when I turned 5. I remember my mom telling me that when we were going to the doctor's office getting ready for school one year, they made a note of my weight and saying that I was a little overweight. And when I turned 8, they found out I was insulin resistant. And from that point on, it was just a cycle of putting me on diets and trying to find things that would work, putting me on different medications. None of them really worked. I remember in my freshman year of high school being over 230 pounds, but then immediately after high school had ballooned up to over 330 pounds. And I stayed at that 300-pound mark up until I got pregnant. And that pregnancy was really hard because I had struggled with my weight my whole life, so it wasn't new to me, but seeing the health effects of it when I was put in the doctor's office so often, it was scary because I was seeing the numbers and the doctors being all concerned and asking all the questions and just having to be faced with it a lot. And I think I had gotten to a point at my weight where, because I had dealt with it for so long, I really had stopped paying attention to it. And up until before I had gotten pregnant, I had become very reclusive. I didn't go outside much. I didn't buy clothes because I didn't want to have to deal with trying on clothes or finding my size. So I avoided everything that reminded me of how unhealthy I was and how big I was. And then when I was in the doctor's office so often during my pregnancy, it really made me see just how far I had gone. And it was hard for me as a mom because I was like, wow, I've gotten to this point, and right now it's not just affecting me, it's affecting my baby and my baby's health. I wanted to be healthier for my son. I wanted to be an active mom. I wanted to be there for him in the way that he needed me to be. And it didn't come necessarily just from losing the weight, but just, taking care of myself and putting myself first and giving myself that attention that I needed that I hadn't been giving to myself before. Halfway through my pregnancy, I had high blood pressure, so gestational hypertension. And I faced some challenges with that, especially because about 8 months into my pregnancy, me and my husband at the time, we had decided to move across the country. And so my doctor had been a little concerned and said, you're taking this cross-country trip. You need to make sure you're taking care of yourself. And he said, check your blood pressure, take your medication when your blood pressure gets too high, get out and walk and make sure you're getting your blood pumping to you, through you and to the baby and everything. And I remember one of the nights we were traveling, we stopped at our hotel and I checked my blood pressure, and my blood pressure was through the roof, and I panicked and took my medication. And when we got to our new home, I talked to my new doctor about it and what had happened, and she looked at me with these huge eyes and she's, I don't want to scare you, but you could have lost your baby. Your blood pressure being that high put him at risk and you at risk. Like, you could have lost your baby. And I didn't at the time realize how bad it was. I knew to be concerned, but it just put in perspective just how fragile my health was at that point. And I had to wrap my head around that and really decide what to do with it at that point. I think my weight problems definitely stemmed from my emotional eating. I think from a young age, just ate for comfort. And I think after I went into young adulthood, that became like my eating disorder. I had a binge eating disorder for a long time, especially in the early years of my marriage. I would eat 3,000 to 5,000 calories a day just because I was unhappy. I was not taking care of myself. I was not loving myself properly. And it's just hard because I didn't really grow up with the tools to do. I grew up in that being treated as the fat girl. I grew up overweight and in a environment that shamed women who were overweight and told women that all they were worth was what they could offer with their bodies and as moms. And that was something I think I struggled with because when I was so young and I went through my adolescence and my developmental years having that mentality of I'm not worth something because I'm not of value in society's eyes. It was a combination of things. I was pretty introverted as a kid, but I did get bullied. I had instances of being laughed at by groups of kids, and that stuck with me. The guys was never were interested in me simply just because I was the big girl, and it was a small community, so it was like there were 20 kids my age. So it's very easy to be ostracized that way when you're the one big girl out of 20 kids. And I think that was hard for me because I just was consistently the black sheep. And then I watched how I was treated. And then I also grew up when MySpace and Facebook was just starting. And I specifically remember I was scrolling Facebook in the very, very early days of Facebook, and I saw a video of a bigger woman. And I looked at the comments just because I was like, I'm big and I want to see what people are saying. And I read these comments, and there were multiple comments of people just tearing her down or telling that you don't deserve to live because she was overweight. And I was like, oh, this really is how the world is going to treat people like me. And so that's why I think I dove even deeper into that isolation, because I said, the world's going to treat me or people like me in this way. I'm just going to hide because I would rather hide and avoid being ostracized. For me, the biggest challenge losing the weight has been the mental shift, because like I said, I grew up with a certain mentality and a certain way of looking not only at myself but like my body, and it had obviously stayed with me up until my young adulthood. And it's just crazy to me because you don't find a lot of people who go through such a massive physical transformation, because you have to think of it from like their point of view. I don't see myself. Like the only way I see myself is through pictures or the mirror, or I don't see myself. So all you have is what you're going off in your head. But what is based in your head is, your memories. So I'm constantly fighting that memory of myself in my bigger body, and that mentality that I held while I was in that bigger body. It sometimes is hard for me, especially when you don't see yourself clear. Like just trying to accept yourself and shake off that mentality. I think it's definitely gotten better, and I feel like just society has gotten a lot better in being more accepting of every type of body and even bigger bodies. And I think I have gotten to a place of acceptance and love, not only for my own body, but just in everything in general. I feel like I've healed a lot. Childhood trauma, everybody's messed up. But I think that I've worked through a lot of that and have tried to just be like, even though I was big then, like I deserved love then too. I guess there was a lot of things that I wanted to do with my life that I felt like not really my weight, but my mentality I had while I was really overweight made it almost impossible for me to achieve some of these things. My mentality held me back from making friends, from pursuing relationships, just literally anything. And I've had that feeling in a lot of different instances since I've lost my weight. And it really has nothing to do with the weight, but more, like I said, the mentality shift that I've had in being able to love myself more and say, if I want this, I can have it. And it's hard to give yourself things when you don't think you deserve it. The hardest part, I guess it would almost have to be similar, like realizing that I harbored so much self-hate unnecessarily and trying to forgive myself for that. And that's been really hard for me, is like just how much I took out on myself internally. And like, I wish I had the tools at the time to do better for myself, but I just didn't. I had the gastric bypass, and it basically reroutes your stomach and creates a smaller portion of your stomach that will be used going forward. And it becomes about the size of your fist, and then they reroute your intestines to that small fist-sized stomach. And that basic concept is just restriction. Your stomach's smaller, you can't eat as much. And what's interesting for me about the bypass is it cuts out the portion of your stomach that produces the hunger hormone. So you are not even producing that hormone that is making you feel hungry anymore. So you have less of an appetite, and you have less of a stomach to eat with anyway. And it was quite a process getting ready for surgery and then healing after surgery. Pre-surgery, you have to go on a liquid diet for, I believe, at least a week, which, think about drinking nothing but liquid for an entire week. That was, even without the surgery, that was one of the hardest things about it, was just having a normal stomach and then having to do nothing but drink liquids for an entire week. That was hard. Because not only are you healing physically from being cut and sewn, but you are training yourself in this new stomach. And so you are limited to like liquids for so long, and then you get some baby food, and then you move up from there. And it's, the hardest part for me has been now in this maintenance phase, because I had my bypass 5 years ago now, and I have an issue with reactive hypoglycemia, which is a complication you can get from a gastric bypass, which is similar to what diabetics get when they've had. Now that I've lost the weight, I have more confidence, I have better health, I have more opportunities for me, and just those things alone have opened up other things in my life that it's like, if I have to be a little more vigilant about planning my meals, I feel like that's a fair trade-off for a happier life. I just feel like in general, people treat those who are overweight or bigger just with that they don't have feelings, or that they aren't. I feel like when I was bigger, I got very frustrated because I'm like, I have feelings. And it's frustrating when it's all pointed back to your weight. Because after I lost my weight, yes, I was a lot happier, but it wasn't because I lost the weight. It was because I had done the mental work to say, I am worth loving and worth taking care of. Weight loss surgery is a big commitment. It's a lot of, I would recommend it to someone who wants to undergo weight loss surgery if they were wanting to lose the weight, if they were ready to commit to it. Because it is not for somebody who's gonna half-ass it and not do all the steps, because one, that's very unsafe, especially with how you are altering your body. I am worth way more than what my body has to offer society. I think that's where my self-worth got caught up, was that I grew up in a very toxic male viewed environment that said I am only worth what my body can provide to someone else. But I am so much more than that, and every single person is so much more than what they can do for someone else. And you are worth taking care of yourself. You're worth giving yourself what you want. You can be the person that you want to be, that you see in your head, and like, you have the tools to get there. I've definitely used social media to connect with people, especially since when I was overweight, I was way more introverted and shy, and using social media was my way of being extroverted without actually having to deal with people. And I have really enjoyed the connections and the support I've gotten through social media, I've been able to use it as my journal, like my journal for my journey, just to my milestones. And that's been important for me, especially on the days now where it's been a while. I can go back and remind myself of the work that I've done and remind myself to keep pushing and to be proud of myself and be proud of where I'm at and where I've came from. And it's rewarding to get feedback from people who are going through the same things or are interested in weight loss surgery or not even interested in weight loss at all. My advice to anybody struggling with their weight is you are more than your weight, and weight fluctuates day to day. It fluctuates year to year. If you don't like where you are, you have the power to change it. And it doesn't even have to be a drastic change for you to feel a difference. Even literally just getting more sleep at night can make a big change in how you feel physically. It's find something you can do for yourself that will make a small difference. And it's little steps like that, just finding little things here and there, that you'll become addicted to finding things that help you feel better physically. And just as a byproduct, you'll start feeling better mentally. And I'm like a firm believer that your relationship with your body is all in your head. And if you are unhappy with your weight, it's just how you're seeing it. And if it's truly something you are unhappy with, you have the power and the tools to change that. But it is also all within your head and your power to change the view in your head. And you just give yourself that love and you can get to the point that you want to be. It's a long, hard process, but it is possible. Everybody has to take control of their own health. And so I think it is counterproductive to try to shame people into doing something, because at the end of the day, it's that person's job. And if all you're doing is trying to shame them, you're not giving them any of the tools they really need to do any sort of real change. If you want someone to be happy and healthy, you have to give them love and acceptance.